To start off with, just wanted to show you guys how you can make your own weave poles. This is just a plastic garden stake that you can stick in the ground really easily with some PVC dropped over the top. You can also take some broom poles and stick them in the ground with the broom part facing upwards. Be creative with what you can find for those weave poles. And then right here, this shows you the proper form for weaving. The dog is going to enter with the first pole on their left and zigzag every other pole until they are done. This shows the 6 set that you would find starting in intermediate. There are 12 poles as well for those of you that are in more advanced classes, so just keep that in mind as you are practicing. As you're setting up your weave poles, keep in mind that each pole should be about 24 inches apart for best spacing. Alright, first thing we're going to talk about this week is working on teaching your dog to weave. You'll need to know this skill by the time you're in the intermediate class, but even if you're just in elementary right now, it's a really great skill to work on because it does take a lot of time to have really good weaves. What we're demonstrating here is called the 2x2 method. You start with 2 poles and start by having your dog run through those 2 poles. This is going to help teach them the correct entry for the weave poles. Dogs must enter the weave poles with the first pole on their left. So the dog has to be to the right of the first pole on their left. And this 2x2 method starts with just a single set of 2 and starts teaching the dog how to enter the poles properly. And you'll see, once again, we're utilizing that toss of a toy to get the dog moving forward. Once you can do 2 sets well, next step is to add an additional set. That additional set is going to be offset just a little bit. It can be more direct when you start, but it's going to be offset just a little bit for your dog to start learning how to run through multiple sets. Also a note, she is wearing flip-flops, but they are not recommended for safety reasons and can be dangerous, so please do not wear those when you're practicing. So now you're going to see Kelso learning how to run through multiple sets of those 2x2 weaves, and we're going to add until we get to the correct amount of weaves. If your dog makes a mistake, you're just going to try it again. It's likely on handler error. And then toy toss for there. And you also see she's practicing on both sides as well. What he's learning to do is find each set of 2 and continue going through sets of 2 until there are no more sets of 2 to go through. What she did when she reset it is make it a little bit harder so they weren't as direct. And you're just going to slowly move them until they do look like a regular set of straight weave poles. Another option for teaching weave poles is the channel method, and in this method you are going to start with the poles just spaced out, so every other one is going to be off to the side so that your dog can run straight through them. As your dog gets confidence with running straight through them, then you start to slowly move the poles inwards. A combination of the 2x2 and the channel method can give you some really great weaves in the end. I also just wanted to give you guys an aerial view of the weave poles. So the dots are the weave poles themselves, and the blue line is the dog's path. This is showing the beginning of that 2x2 method, where the dog is running and the poles are angled, and the dog basically sees a straight line through those poles. It's also very similar to how the channels are initially set up. As we progress with the 2x2 method, again, this is showing 2 sets of 2, you'll start to angle them slightly. So as the angle, the dog's path becomes a little bit skinnier, and they have to start to actually weave. They have to weave a little bit more with even some more angle put on it until we end up with the final straight line that we are looking for. So it just gives you another perspective on what we're looking for with those weave poles and how we can teach the dogs to run through them straight before we start putting them at any sort of angle there. Also great to practice getting your dog used to some wobbly surfaces. So here I have some foam and yoga mat over the top of a book so that Wendigo is learning how to walk on something that's going to move around a little bit. It's also great if you have access to something that's about 1 foot wide to get your dog used to walking over the top of it, because the dog walk and the teeter are both going to be much skinnier than the A-frame that your dog is used to. All right, so to wrap up week 1, some other things that are great to work on are to continue to practice contact behavior. So if you have a 2-on, 2-off contact, whatever your dog does at the bottom of contact obstacles, we went over that in the beginner course classes, is great to practice it and proof it. Make sure that your dog is able to stop at the bottom and stay there without having to worry too much about if they're going to miss that yellow zone. One more skill that's really great to work on is teaching your dog to wrap an obstacle. This is helpful for being able to turn quickly around a jump and have them understand how their body is supposed to move. So you can use a cone, you can use a tree. I'm using an empty bottle here. And what I'm going to do with my dog is lure them around that obstacle to start so that they are turning around it. Getting a little more confident with going that direction and making those body motions. And I'm slowly gonna try and do less of a hand movement so that I don't have to lure him around, but that he's learning to actually go around the obstacle independently. And then I'm going to work on doing it standing. And that's really helpful because when we are running agility courses, we are going to be upright, we're going to be standing, and a lot of the footwork that we're going to do to send them around any sort of obstacle is going to be very similar to that footwork that we're going to do when we're out on the agility course. So you can see I'm using my leg to really push him forward and my arm to tell him to pull back around that obstacle. And you can imagine that translating to a jump where the dog is going to go over the jump, come back, and then maybe they're going to cross and they're going to end up on your right side after that jump, and then you would continue running towards the camera. Dog on the left side, wrap, dog ends up on the right, and then you can continue on the course from there. That's a way to kind of do the front cross on a wrap of a jump. Signal with the left hand, dog goes over the jump, and then back, pick him up on the right side. As your dog progresses, you'll be able to send them from further away. So in that case, I didn't have to step fully over to the bottle to send Wendigo around. And that'll give you some really great foundation for working on jump wraps.